The world's gone mad. Trade it. Thanks, Kalshi. You've officially coined a tagline that sums up this dystopian capitalist hellhole we're all living in. Because apparently, if the world is burning, we don't put the fire out. Don't be silly. We should bet on it.
This guy found the craziest way to make money using AI.
While the world's been talking about it, I've been betting on it. How else do you think I can afford all this? Modeling?
I just made $500 on Polymarket betting on eggs.
I am putting $33,000, which is every single dime that I have saved, on the Seattle Seahawks winning the Super Bowl.
This whole modeling thing is something that I didn't expect to happen. It's not like, oh, I'm a model. It's actually, I'm modeling and we're going to make money at this and it's going to be a business.
Who visited Epstein's Island? You could bet on a celebrity that who visited. I ain't gonna lie, bro. Do y'all think Trump went to the island?
And if you thought it couldn't possibly get worse, people are now betting on wars. On platforms like Polymarket and Kalshi, you can place money on whether countries will attack each other, whether airstrikes will happen, and whether a political leader will be killed. So let's get into this batshit crazy world of prediction markets. Let's talk about what they are. Yes, they're just gambling with different regulations, why they've exploded in popularity, and why turning geopolitics into a casino game might be the most dangerous trend we've ever seen. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Lola and I make videos breaking down the systems and patterns that shape our everyday lives. If you enjoy this video and want to see more of my videos, make sure to subscribe below and hit the bell to be notified every time I post. But let's get back to the video. When I first saw that slogan from Kalshi, I genuinely thought it was satire. I mean, you know what TikTok's like. I thought it was just a parody about late-stage capitalism. But no, that's an actual tagline for an actual billion-dollar company. And that's how companies market themselves in 2026. And the implication of that slogan is that when something super destabilizing happens in the world, when countries are attacking each other or threatening each other, when economies crash, we should be monetizing it rather than holding people accountable for their decisions. Like, why should we question what's going on in the world when we can take advantage of it? And yes, I know I probably sound a little bit too heated over a dumb tagline, but quite literally, if you go on the Polymarket website right now, you can place money on whether Trump is going to place more tariffs on other countries, how long the Russian invasion of Ukraine is going to last, and more recently, the timing and duration of the US invasion of Iran. Yeah, not the one 25 years ago.
I was listening to a podcast yesterday and it starts playing an ad promoting Kalshi, not in terms of like betting on sports or betting on whatever. It's literally promoting Kalshi so that you can bet on the State of the Union. What sort of dystopian nightmare are we living in that there's this advertisement for us to place bets on what crazy Donald Trump is going to say at the State of the Union address?
But once geopolitics becomes something that you can bet on minute by minute, it actually changes the entire structure of how these political decisions are being made. So let's break down the current state of gambling, the rise of prediction markets, and what this might look like for our future. Now, before we get into the absolute nightmare that is prediction markets today, we've got to zoom out a little bit. Because gambling culture has been slowly embedding itself into the mainstream for years by this point. Pretty much every time I open a social media app, I'm hit with a barrage of influencer promotion posts and just general sports betting ads. And we see them a lot more around this specific time of year when there's the Super Bowl or specific finals, Olympics, etc. And they love to call it anything but what it actually is. You'll hear influencer after influencer saying it's the strategic, analytical thing to do with your money, and to frame it as if betting is some sort of stable investment. But funnily enough, understanding odds does not make you financially savvy, you just are lucky. And in most cases, people aren't lucky. In fact, a study in early 2025 showed that nearly a quarter of US adults admitted to being sports betting addicts, which was even higher among Gen Z, with up to 37%. So it has begun to completely saturate Gen Z culture. So with our generations already primed to accept this framing, these prediction market apps came straight in and started telling everyone, oh, we're information-based trading. And people just happily accepted that. When students were interviewed by The Guardian earlier this year, one said, oh, I wouldn't describe it as gambling. It's a mix of betting and options trading, which, say it with me, is bullshit. Because as soon as you start to categorize these prediction market apps as trading rather than gambling, gambling, they're automatically getting the legitimacy of the finance field. It makes it sound like a strategic decision you can make, and a responsible one at that. But the mechanism works in exactly the same way. You're still placing your money on completely uncertain outcomes. And these platforms are operating in what many journalists are calling a regulatory vacuum. While traditional insider trading laws apply to general stock markets, they don't map directly onto decentralized crypto-based prediction markets. Now, there are many countries starting to make moves against these apps. For example, Polymarket is banned and geo-blocked in the UK, France, and Belgium, particularly due to regulatory and licensing challenges. But while some parts of the world are stepping back from these platforms, we are watching them expand so rapidly in the countries that they're still allowed in. And by rapidly, I mean hugely rapidly. These platforms are driving ridiculously large amounts of revenue, with Polymarket alone valued at over $9 billion US. And many experts are saying that the value of some of these main platforms together will reach $1 trillion by 2030. Of course, when it all started blowing up, it was ridiculous at the beginning. People were putting their life savings on the most ridiculous of predictions. But now we're talking about an almost $1 trillion industry being closely tied to elections, legislation, geopolitical tensions across the world. There could be some really far-reaching impacts, and many of them we're only just starting to see. Now let's be real, there are some absolutely absurd predictions in the market. You can bet on how long people's speeches are gonna last. You can bet on whether certain celebrities or politicians will say a specific word.
Welcome back to the Grammys. Potato. If you had me saying potato on Polymarket, you just made a ton of money. So congratulations, Noah_22, whoever that is.
And one bet we've seen time and time again is people betting on whether there'll be a streaker at a major sports event. Yet we've seen a couple times now where someone will put money on there being a streaker, and then they themselves will attend the sports thing and be the streaker.
What are the chances that there's some dude out there who took his life savings and emptied his bank account, bought a ticket to sit 50-yard line at the Super Bowl right there on the field? And then what are the chances that that dude pops the top off and streaks out right onto the 50-yard line? And what are the chances that that same dude was smart enough to go on Polymarket or one of these prediction markets and create a bet for himself and bet the rent that someone's going to run on the field at Super Bowl 60?
The streaker at the Super Bowl won almost $375,000 because he wagered that there would in fact be a streaker at the game. But will he be able to collect?
And that sounds funny, but that's quite literally insider trading right there. Someone benefiting over knowing the outcome. Because that's exactly how these things work. The moment that there is money attached to a specific outcome, behaviors can change. This is completely basic incentive theory, which argues that behaviors are primarily motivated by the desire for external rewards, or to avoid negative consequences. So it says that rather being motivated by internal drivers, we've got environment stimuli like praise, recognition, money, all shaping our actions and reinforcing our habits. And that motivation increases when the reward becomes higher and higher in value. But what does that mean for these prediction markets? Well, people have fun wondering who's going to win the coin toss or whether Jesus is going to return this year. Now that the predictions are focused on military escalation and geopolitical conflict, these behavioral changes could be a whole lot more dangerous. Earlier this year, Futurism reported an anonymous bettor on Polymarket perfectly predicted the US invasion of Venezuela, mere hours before over 150 US aircraft rocked the country's capital of Caracas, netting them over $400,000. The incident reignited a heated debate over inside trading on prediction market platforms like Polymarket and Kalshi. While the act is strictly forbidden on Wall Street, prediction markets are currently operating in a regulatory vacuum, allowing those who enjoy insider status to score big, while everyone else is left to pick up the bill. And that's the thing, in society we have agreed that insider trading is completely wrong. It's a crime in traditional markets in countries across the world because it completely undermines fairness and erodes our trust in those institutions. But while these prediction markets are operating outside of the regulations, they are explicitly designed to reward whoever gets the information first. A Guardian article writes that concerns of insider trading trading also loom large. Prediction markets thrive on what Crane called the moment the first person finds the information, and are designed to reward people who are better at getting information, faster at getting information, and oftentimes in a way that appears suspicious. Now, I'm not trying to put on my conspiracy theorist tinfoil hat here, but we have seen so many reports of this behavior. In fact, right before the Super Bowl halftime show a few weeks ago, an anonymous day-old Polymarket account correctly guessed over 17 out of the 20 bets surrounding the Super Bowl's halftime show. We regularly see Trump and other high-up politicians talking about the huge bets that their cabinet are making.
He made $2.5 billion today, and he made $900 million.
In the lead up to the Nobel Peace Prize ceremony this year, bets for the winner actually spiked really unnaturally. And I think many of us saw the video clip on social media of Caroline Leavitt's infamous under 65-minute speech, where she abruptly ended her speech literally in the middle of a sentence and walked off right before the 65-minute mark.
In November of last year. And so I would encourage everyone to take a look at the website. It's quite well done. And thank you all very much. It's great to be back with you.
And there was so much money riding on that bet. But that's the thing, we're seeing all of these articles come out clear as day, but nothing can be done about them. When a system rewards whoever has early access to their sensitive information, and sensitive information tends to sit inside political institutions, that's already creating a lot of tension. And we don't just need to speculate. The Trump administration has taken a markedly less tough stance on the industry, and it has reported close ties. Donald Trump Jr. is currently both an investor in and an unpaid advisor to Polymarket, as well as a paid advisor to Kalshi. And Trump's social media company even recently announced it wanted to start its own platform called Truth Predict. And if you're asking how in the hell this is legal, yeah, I'm asking him the same thing. But governance is about more than legality, because the law is slow. It takes time to catch up, especially when technology is advancing this rapidly. So right now, what's more important is perception, legitimacy, and trust in these institutions, as well as in these political leaders. But when the most powerful political actors on the planet are completely financially entangled with these speculative, predictive platforms that profit from political instability, public trust becomes completely fragile. And it's not as if it was that stable to begin with. The state of our democracy literally depends on there being legitimacy and trust. But right now, lines are being blurred more than ever before. It's been less clear than ever to actually trace back what has been said and by who. So let's check the website a little bit. Right. Doesn't look so fun anymore, does it? Will the Iranian regime fall by June 30th? We've also got up here in the top right, will Hillary say island during her Epstein testimony? Will Bill Clinton say plane during his Epstein testimony? If we scroll down, we've got the Texas Democratic Senate primary winner. When the US and Iran will reach a ceasefire. But it just keeps on going. US-Israel strikes Iran on what date? What will Trump say during events with Chancellor Merz on 3rd of March? When will there be a new supreme leader of Iran? Is this not the most dystopian thing you've ever seen? Have people forgotten that this is innocent lives we're talking about? Innocent communities being bombed? And look how much money is being bet on these. Look at this one, $9 million. Down here, $201 million. $115 million. And look here, the Democratic presidential nominee for 2028, $750 million has been bet on this. Yet they're trying to make it sound as if this is not gambling. I don't know about you, but this is fucked. So of course I want to bring in a little bit of a peace and conflict lens, because in conflict studies we talk a lot about conflict economies, systems where instability becomes economically embedded. And in these situations, certain actors materially benefit off these ongoing tensions, crises, and wars. Now, traditionally, a lot of these actors are thought of as arms industries or private contractors, but prediction markets have introduced something very different, because you don't need to be an active actor anymore to have a say. You don't need to be manufacturing the weapons yourself. You don't need to be escalating the violence. You can sit back in your chair at home and financially position yourself around this instability. And after some amount of time, instability starts functioning as if it's something that you can hold and trade and move money around. So political instability is not purely political anymore. It's a financial gain. As the article I mentioned before says, this could be the future of election betting and possibly the future of geopolitics if world events can be influenced by prediction market activity. The rise in prediction markets raises critical questions for the future of democracy. In order to ensure that trust in democracy can be upheld in the era of prediction markets, regulations and safeguards must be strengthened for an industry that is now both bordered and borderless. One of Polymarket's advertising slogans invites users to answer some of the world's biggest questions. Perhaps the single biggest question concerns the political and ethical implications of predicting the future for money in this way. And perhaps the most stark example of this are the recent reports coming out surrounding the invasion of Iran, because 6 newly created anonymous crypto wallets made over $1.2 million by correctly betting that the US would strike Iran. But they placed huge bets only hours before the actual attack happened. How is a single part of that sentence ethically okay? Again, I'm not going to put on my conspiracy hat. I'm not going to say with absolute certainty that this is insider trading. But either way, people are betting on life or death situations. And again, you can do that without having any physical skin in the game. And we talk so much about how people are craving stability. But these markets rely on a volatile economy, rely on volatile political situations. And as this volatility starts to produce financial incentives for people, stability starts looking like the less economically attractive option. So we're seeing this reinforced cycle where the systems are reflecting our behavior back to us, but are also shaping our behavior to crave that volatility, because it's the only way we will find financial stability. So now we have to include this current rise of AI into the matter. And AI can scrape data so much faster than humans. It can analyze the most subtle of language shifts in political speeches. It can monitor all of the news feeds at the same time. It can track economic indicators across the world. And it can execute all of these trades in milliseconds. And this has allowed this prediction market and betting to become micro betting. Instead of betting on the outcome of a game, we're now speculating on the play minute by minute. And this rapid evolvement of crypto infrastructure is making these platforms completely borderless and really hard to regulate. And it's advancing more and more as it learns from this feedback loop that is created when you combine this speed, speculation, and geopolitical volatility. And now that volatility is becoming profitable for people, it's becoming more and more normalized in society. As always, there's so much more that I can say, and this is barely scraping the surface, because realistically, we have no idea what the future holds in this industry. But war and conflict and violence against civilians, these are things that we should be treating with the gravity that they deserve. We need to humanize these perspectives because there are real lives in danger. People who have to live with the reality of these situations and these bets. Elections are meant to be civic processes. Policy decisions affect real people's lives. These prediction market platforms are shifting how we emotionally relate to crises. In the past, we've seen time and time again that political instability triggers fear and outrage, grief and mobilization. People went out onto the streets to protest. People would debate that instability. It sparked journalism pieces and protests and collective responses. But now we're starting to be trained to look at it as speculation. How could we make money off that instability? And what will the betting odds look like in a day or a week? So as we take the humanity out of these conflicts happening and the harm they're causing, as we keep betting on missile strikes and election outcomes and tariff announcements, the very moral fabric of this politics changes. And that's the thing, while instability remains profitable, there will always be actors, people positioning themselves around that instability. And as the people with the earliest access to information are profiting the most and generating the most returns, information asymmetry becomes more and more valuable than ever. And what we see in conflict studies time and time again is that more information asymmetry means more threats, less trust in different countries, less globalization, more isolation. So as these markets are making that information asymmetry more and more valuable than ever in the political systems, our democratic equality is being eroded slowly in the background. So we've got to be screaming out these questions. Americans, please join me on this. What incentives are being built into the system? Are regulations being put in place to ensure that this doesn't become dehumanized? To ensure that the geopolitical state of the world is not being gambled on? When you come across a video of some random influencer talking about how they tripled their life savings, stop and think, is that actually realistic if I was to join that? Because if you're not a politician or a celebrity with friends in high places, you're not going to be getting the information first. And if you are, I would like to remind you that insider trading is illegal for a reason. Look, even if people who are placing bets on these websites aren't actively causing harm, the existence of these financial stakes around war are completely changing how those wars are being perceived. And it's making neutrality so much more complicated. And if we start to view crises as potential profit opportunities, we're training ourselves to see catastrophes as potential financial stability for us rather than the tragedy that they are. We detach from the humanity of the situation. And that detachment is really dangerous because the very fabric of our democracy relies on public emotional investment. We rely on people caring deeply about outcomes and about each other, but from an ethical standpoint, not a financial one. So to finish it up, please don't put your life savings into Polymarket. And if you know people who are, ask them why. Because if we don't start interrogating this behavior now, or at least talking about what's being normalized, we're risking sleepwalking into a system where wars, elections, and human suffering are just another spike in someone's investment portfolio. But let me know, what do you think about these prediction market platforms? Do you think they should be regulated in the same way that stock markets are? And do you think that those platforms should have to draw a line on what you are and aren't able to bet on? Let me know in the comments below. Now, I have to end this video at some point, so thank you very, very much for joining me on this ride. And if there's anything you think I missed out, please feel free to leave a comment below. I'd love to start a discussion. But that's all from me today, so if you liked the video, please make sure to like and comment below, and subscribe to the channel to make sure that you hear all of my future rants. And with that, I will see you next week. Bye!